Finn Maverick, a hired mercenary, tiptoed through the thick alien forest, his pulse weapon ready, sweat streaming down his chiseled face and stinging his steel-gray eyes. Bitterly, he thought to himself, perhaps another milk run, heading to some backwater planet to retrieve the client's misplaced cargo, then rinse and repeat. However, Finn's line of business was never straightforward, particularly when the cargo turned out to be a cache of illegal weapons capable of destroying an entire city block or sparking a war. "Why can't these jobs ever be on a beach planet with friendly locals?" Finn mumbled. His dark curls were plastered to his forehead as he chopped through a particularly resistant vine with his machete. Suddenly, he froze his keen senses and sensed movement up ahead. Finn dropped into a crouch, blending with the purple vegetation. "If that's another one of," he shouted, "those giant bugs, I'm going to make a wall mount out of it." But Finn's breath caught as he stared through the rifle's sight and saw a cluster of enormous eggs nestled in a clearing. Each egg was easily 6 feet tall and was sculpted. Finn cried out, "What the hell laid those monsters?" as he edged closer to get a better look. Suddenly, one of the eggs started to split and tremble. He positioned his rifle finger at the trigger, ready to witness what type of nightmare it would be. The colors were blue and green, shimmering with a viscous fluid. Fuel emerges from you, the shell splits open with a sickening squelch, revealing a delicate blue arm and a shapely leg. Finn blinks in shock, unable to believe that a naked female humanoid emerges from the egg, slippery with amniotic slime and standing on shaky legs with damp skin. Suddenly, as if sensing Finn's presence, she turned around, her large almond-shaped eyes glistening with an iridescent cobalt and a cascade of inky black hair falling down her back. Finn murmured, "Well, hello there," appreciatively lowering his gun. With a timid step closer, the alien girl bent her head and studied him with fascination. She immediately crashed face down onto the loamy dirt. Luckily, Smurfette Finn arrived quickly to assist her up, and she clung to him, pressing her lee body against his battle. The girl trilled something in a musical alien tongue, her plump lips forming the unfamiliar syllables, and she reached up to stroke Finn's face, tracing the stubble on his jaw with long, delicate fingers, her skin tingling as a tingling warmth went through his pelvis. Bad boy, he admonished himself, was surprisingly cool and soft-looking. "I'm flattered, but I don't have time for this," Finn said, shoving her away with a gruff but gentle demeanor. As he turned to walk away, the girl grabbed hold of his arm with unexpected strength and pointed at Finn. With a peculiar move, she seemed to be staring at herself. Finn asked, "Are you trying to say I'm the first male you've ever seen and you want to breed with me?" And the girl nodded fervently, her silver eyes shining. Finn remarked to Smurfette, "I'm flattered, really, but I'm not exactly daddy material. Trust me, you don't want my genes." Gently but firmly, as she pulled herself against him and ran her hands over his chest, in a way that left little room for interpretation. With a frustrated groan, he unclipped his cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. The girl's eyes in the pool filled with glittering tears, and her lower lip shook, twisting Finn's heart with an unexpected pang. He couldn't just leave her here nude and alone. Finn was given the clear sensation that the girl was beaming at him, hugging her cloak tightly, as she danced on her heels and fluttered her long lashes. "You can tag along until we find some other male," he said, "but don't get any notions I ain't looking to be anyone's baby daddy." The girl stayed close to Finn's side, her bare feet padding soundlessly over the spongy earth, and she hadn't comprehended a word he'd said. Fantastic. Now he was saddled with a dumb blue bombshell with a breeding kink. Exactly what this mission needed. Even while Finn found her childlike wonder incredibly endearing, she would occasionally point eagerly at some strange creature or plant and talk in her melodic tongue. However, he couldn't afford to get distracted because he had money to find, a customer to please, and a lawless road to navigate. Finn prayed that this weird blue girl wouldn't become more troublesome than she was worth, little realizing that their fates were already irreversibly entangled and that the wheels of destiny had started to turn. Frontier planet like this, letting down your guard for even a second may prove fatal. Turn, and nothing would ever be the same for them both. The alien jungles appeared to go on forever, a never-ending sea of purple and green. Finn, wearing a grim expression, hacked through the dense foliage, his blue-skinned friend following closely behind the girl he thought was important. Think of a name for her, as she appeared to possess boundless energy and was darting between odd plants with wide-eyed wonder and cautious Finn, admonishing her as she reached out to touch one particularly vivid flower. Everything in this jungle wants to kill you, eat you, or both. Cocked her head, obviously not comprehending what he was saying, but she still removed her hand. Finn was strangely touched by her faith in him, but he reminded himself, "Get a grip, Maverick. She's just a means to an end. A very attractive, very naked means to an end." Sensing that he was thinking about something, the girl approached him and pressed her gentle curves against his arm. She whispered something in a beautiful voice and batted her long lashes. Finn felt a familiar stirring in his crotch and hastily moved away. "Now!" he exclaimed angrily. "We've got—" There's still a long way to go, so I need to remain focused." The girl pouted, but they didn't pursue the matter. For a time, the only sound they heard was the crunch of their footsteps and the distant cries of alien wildlife. Suddenly, Finn raised his hand. Signaling, he motioned for the girl to halt after spotting a flash of metal that didn't belong in the organic jungle. With his weapon ready, he crept forward and found the cache he had been ordered to hide, lying in a small clearing. Finn mumbled, lowering his rifle, ready to stride into the clearing when a piercing cry pierced the air. The sleek metal crates bore no marks, but he knew they had enough firepower to start a little war or end one payday. Upon witnessing the girl with blue skin battling under the powerful alien being, it was apparent that the thing was 8 feet tall, with a face resembling a smashed pumpkin and one meaty hand covering her lips to silence her cries. Angry as he reached for her barely covered body, Finn's stomach turned to stone. Raising his gun, he fired a shot that blasted a fist-sized hole in the creature's head, causing it to drop like a stone and release the girl Finn was with. The girl clung to Finn, burying her face in his chest as she shivered, and he picked her up quickly as she staggered forward. "You okay, Smurfette?" he said, examining her for injuries aside from a few bruises. Finn massaged her back awkwardly, not sure how to console her. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." As the girl stopped shaking, Finn carefully released her hold and said, "Stay here." He then pressed his spare pistol into her hands and gave the order, "Anything moves, shoot it." The girl nodded, her silver eyes becoming more determined, and Finn felt a surge of feeling pride in her perseverance. Perhaps there was more to her than her attractive appearance in a breeding obsession. Finn quickly loaded the containers onto the hover sled he had prepared specifically for this purpose and secured the final one. He hesitated when he felt a gentle touch on his arm. The girl with blue skin stood next to him, and the blaster held her loosely. She spoke in a high-pitched voice, pointing to the crates before asking herself, "Do you want to come with me?" Finn raised an eyebrow. Girl vigorously nodded. Finn groaned, running a hand through his sweaty, damp curls. He knew he should say no, as attachments were a danger in his line of business, but he couldn't help but be drawn in by the girl's earnest silver eyes. The girl simply smiled, her whole face lighting up like a supernova as she danced on her heels, obviously pleased at the thought of adventure. Finn shook his head, conceding that danger is a fact of life. He couldn't escape the sense that his life had just taken a turn for the spectacular, and who knew maybe having the girl by his side as he ventured out into the forest once more. He smiled, tugging at his lips, wondering what the hell he was getting himself into. The future was looking brighter already. The spaceport was a swarm of activity, a cacophony of sounds and smells assaulting the senses from every angle. Finn wove his way through the crowd with a partner wouldn't be so bad after all, especially one as intriguing as his blue-skinned mystery girl. He had made her a basic tunic and pants, which did little to cover up her curves, but she still managed to climb the stairs from the rough and tumble denizens of the harbor. Practiced ease, his blue-skinned friends clinging to his side, Finn whispered to her, "Slow down and don't look at me," pointing her in the direction of the docking bays. "These people would sell their own mother for a quick buck," the girl agreed, her silver eyes wide as she took in the sounds and sights of the spaceport. Finn couldn't blame her for being a familiar figure emerged from around a stack of crates, and Finn stiffened his hand, lowering it to the blaster at the sight of the worn old freighter he'd won in a card game. Overwhelmed, it was a far cry from the tranquil jungle where he'd found her. Maverick's hip, a sly grin spreading across his scarred face. "Fancy meeting you here," Graham shrugged, his cybernetic eye glinting in the harsh docking bay light. Finn said in a tone that was cautiously neutral, "I thought I told you to stay away from my ship." He glanced at the hoversled filled with containers and said, "I just wanted to make sure you got my cargo all safe and sound." The man, an infamous arms dealer with a history of duplicity, had hired Finn to acquire the weapons cache, but Finn had no idea what to do with it. Finn pointed to the containers and said, "Illusions about the man's loyalty are all there." When Graham mentioned his money, he smiled broadly and added, "Not so fast, Maverick. You know the drill. Goods first, then payment." Finn's fingers twitched toward his blaster, but he forced himself to remain composed. Graham had a sizable army of thugs behind him. Calling for a battle in the midst of the spaceport was a surefire way to kill them both. Finn stepped aside to let the Grass men to load the containers aboard their transport. Grass gazed over to the blue-skinned girl watching the activities with a mixture of curiosity and fear as they worked on their own hover sled. "Well, what have we here all purred?" Grath purred as he strolled over to the girl. Maverick, your sly dog scooping up stray dogs on Finnick, moved to stand between them, his eyes tightening as he muttered, "She's not a stray." Graham held up his hands in a false surrender, but his smile never wavered. "Easy there, Maverick, I'm just admiring the view," he said as he leaned to wink at Finn. Lear Finn's vision went red, and before he knew what he was doing, he had Grath trapped against the wall. The girl shrank back, obviously uneasy about this lunkhead. "If you ever grow weary of him, love, come find me, and I'll show you a genuine good time." He slammed his forearm on the man's windpipe and said, "Listen closely, you slimy piece of Finn." With his eyes bulging, he snarled, "If you so much as look at her again, I'll gut you like a fish and hang you from your own entrails." He managed a feeble nod, his face becoming a startling shade of purple, and Finn released him, stepping back as the man sank to the ground, gasping for oxygen. "I was just being friendly," the man said, feeling his throat. "Your version of friendly is what most people think friendly," Bastard Grath said, furious. "Call harassment, Finn, spit out my cash." Grath glared at him, but he went under his coat and threw a credit chip at his feet. Finn took it and ran away from me. He pocketed the chip without making sure he knew how much Grath was worth. Finn turned to the girl who was watching him with a mixture of wonder and dread and said, "Come on, SM Fett. Let's blow this joint," as they boarded Finn's ship. His tone was oozing with sarcasm. "Too scared of him to shortchange him pleasure doing business with you." Feeling embarrassed by his angry outburst, the girl put a delicate touch on his arm and spoke softly. Her silver eyes searched his. "I'm sorry you had to see that," she whispered. "That just pushes my buttons." The girl shook her head slightly. The girl nodded, her smile spreading as she leaned in and gently put a soft peck on Finn's chest, mirroring his previous motion of pushing her forearm to her own throat. Finn's eyes widened as he realized Dawn was telling him that she had protected him. Kissed his cheek, her lips cool against his red skin. Finn gulped hard, his heart pounding in his chest. This girl wasn't a blushing schoolboy. She was a hardened mercenary. Finn moved back, putting some distance between them. The girl smiled, her silver eyes sparkling with mischief, and Finn started the ship's engines. He couldn't get rid of the impression that his life was about to become much more complicated, but as he looked across, he discovered that he didn't mind them at all. Perhaps a little complexity was just what he needed. The blue-skinned companion's face lit up with delight as they shot off into the stars, and Finn's ship hurtled through them. Hyperspace. After a tiring day and a demanding week, he reclined in the pilot's chair, his eyes slowly closing as the autopilot operated. Suddenly, a gentle trilling sound startled him, causing him to open one eye and see the girl with blue skin, who he truly needed. Finn mumbled in a hoarse, exhausted voice, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" The girl looked to him and smiled, seemed exhausted, as he tried to think of a better name for her than Smurfette, who was curled up in the co-pilot's seat with her silver eyes locked on the swirling vortex beyond the glass. Finn laughed and said, "You want to go out there and explore the galaxy?" The girl nodded excitedly, her joy evident. Finn felt a prick in his chest from jogging non-stop for so long. She pointed to herself and then the stars. From one work to the next, never pausing to acknowledge the wonders of the universe, but when I saw it through her eyes, everything seemed fresh again. The excitement of discovery and the limitless possibilities were alluring, and Smurfette Finn said, sitting up straighter in his chair, "All right, I'll show you everything this galaxy has to offer if you stick with me and become my companion in this wild life. What say you?" The girl's eyes widened in astonishment, and a smile that was brighter than any star. She launched herself at Finn, putting her arms around his neck in a tight hold. Finn laughed and gave him the same intensity of embrace. He buried his face in her silky hair, inhaling her distinct scent, that of stardust and wild flowers, while they tore apart the girl's body. She nodded, her silver eyes glistening with passion. Finn swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He'd never considered himself parent material. Her look went serious, and she put a palm over her belly before pointing to Finn. Finn's breath froze in his throat. Looking into the girl's eyes and seeing the trust and devotion there, Finn realized that he wanted this, and that she wanted a future beyond the next job and the next combat. His own had been a deadbeat, more interested in drink and gambling than raising a son. "Okay," he murmured, his rough, emotional voice. "Okay, let's do it. Let's start a family." The girl burst into a cry of joy, and Finn laughed, kissing her fiercely as they lost themselves in one another. The ship then continued on its trajectory, leading them to a future that neither of them could have predicted, one that would be full of love, laughter, and unending adventure. As Finn held his partner with blue skin in his arms, he realized that he had finally found his place in the universe, his family, and the stars had never looked better. Years later, so bright, Finn stood on his ship's bridge and watched as his kids chased each other around the hallways. The oldest child, a boy with his father's dark locks and mother's silver eyes, was already demonstrating a flying skill that made Finn's heart race. Pride, mate, and he'd long since moved past thinking of her as Smurfette. Stood beside him, her hand resting on the soft swell of her belly. Their family had expanded as a result of their never-ending exploration and search for new wonders. But Finn drew her near, pressing a Finn knew without a doubt that he was the happiest man in the cosmos, as their ships continued to travel over the stars, as he kissed her temple and whispered, "I love you." Her beautiful trilling was laced with satisfaction and delight. Bringing their small piece of paradise with them, Finn was aware that no matter what lay ahead, they would confront it as a clan and as a family, and that when humanity, in all its magnificent diversity, came together, the cosmos wouldn't know what hit it. Subscribe to watch more amazing sci-fi stories.